I attended one of these, I actually wrote about one of the same panels in Denver in late September. And one of the things that came up in that discussion, and I'd like to have each of you talk about, that one of the things that because there were two men on that panel, and they both agreed that the most important thing men could do in any given situation is admit that there are issues around women being treated fairly, being treated equally, but be willing to step up and speak up in the moment that things happen. If you see somebody who's being mistreated, and I don't say mistreated like abused, or certainly if you see somebody being sexually harassed, but people being diminished in some way. And the examples that were given is when you open up a conference call where there's one woman in the room and the conference call opens up gentlemen, or where you see a woman being talked over or a woman's opinion not being heard, that sometimes that's the kind of situation. And so I want to start by asking, if we start talking about men being allies, what do you guys think that means for a man to be an ally, and is it important?
The persistent existence of this as a problem is incredibly boring to me, and I probably take a fairly more direct approach to this, and I think it's about growing up and wising up. If as we've evolved into what increasingly across every industry is a digital economy, and the success of a business in the digital economy is the interaction of the end user, the customer, with the products that they sell and the experience they have while using those products. And when you're designing those products, when you're designing the experience around those products, and again, I don't care if you're talking about comms or banking or automotive, if you have a male-dominant environment when producing those types of things, you will miss a lot of things. And when I talk about growing up and wising up and recognizing that it isn't about helping women, and it isn't about being kind to women and being more respectful to women, those should be given as normal part of human interaction. It's about recognizing that you make a better product in the end when you have a more balanced contribution to that product. And that's not just women, that's minorities across the board. So yeah, I'm kind of fed up and bored of this topic. The problem persists, and I get that. And yes, we face it every day, openly, subconsciously, accidentally. But come on, it's the 21st century. I'm so tired of having to talk about this as a problem.
Catherine,
yes.
Given your experience and where you are today, like you said, you're sick of talking about this, but can you think of a time when a male ally made a difference?
As in by their own choice, or just in general by...
or you're using them as an example of what not to do? I don't know.
So I think that where it's made a difference for me in my career, it comes back to my gender is academic.
Okay.
My gender is academic to my capabilities. My perspective is only as good as I can back it up and explain it and collaborate around it. It's that non-gender respect.
Okay.
That's where, in my opinion, men make the most difference.
And do you see that today more than you used to?
Definitely.
Okay.
Some of that is obviously I've been around a long time, so more and more my male colleagues are younger than I am, and so they're less naturally biased. But also I think, yes, we have been talking about this for a long time, so older men are more conscious of these things.
Okay.
And do make an effort. But you do have a large percentage that unconsciously treats you different because you're a woman, or because you're black, or because you're Asian. And I think I think coming back to the point you made, there are certain practices that you probably do have to arbitrarily contrive to change that mindset, which is this is an equal opportunity, not just for women and minorities, but for men as well, to get that social acceptance that we're all in this together. We all have similar responsibilities, and we all have a contribution to make.
What you see is the issue around getting more women into engineering and STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math. What do you see the challenges are around that, and what needs to happen?
I mean, for me, it very clearly is something that that we need to be much more active about at a much younger age. And I'm probably a bigger believer in mentoring in schools than I am necessarily mentoring within the industry.
Okay.
Just because I think when you create a positive influence and an equal set of expectations with students, with people in their teens, maybe even younger, which is and I go back to especially with the digital economy, especially with the confluence of technology and everyday living. There are so many obvious aspects to why so many different people can create value and be interested in a role in technology. It doesn't have to be coding. It doesn't have to be software design and architecture or network engineering. They can still make a significant contribution to technology just from a different aspect and play upon whatever strengths they have, regardless of whether they're female or male. Right. And I think going into schools and explaining that and catching technology programs early at the start of somebody's course, when you do have a larger percentage of female, at the point where it typically is 50%, and providing that type of advice and access to information, and I think that's where if we think about the future and the effects we can start to have more fundamentally, I'm a big believer in those types of programs.
A couple things in terms of first of all, let me ask you guys, because you're all leaders within your field. As leaders, how do you practice inclusion? And again, I'm going to take a cue from Catherine and Carol, not just for women, but for inclusion for the full range of diversity, including the disabled and other folks who aren't often at the table. So how do you practice that as a leader?
I apply the same standards of performance to male versus female. On the other hand, if I get one whiff of the notion that there's a lot of mansplaining going on, or this idea that a woman might not be well suited because we know that she's of an age where she's about to get pregnant and so might go away for the next 6 to 8 months, that I have zero tolerance for.
Okay.
And I make that very, very obvious. And for me, it comes back to, we all have the same expectation around quality and contribution, but we are human beings and we are different. Strengths may vary based on gender, and I have no issue with that. Responsibilities at home may vary based on the mom wanting to stay home, the dad wanting to stay home, having to look after the kids if they're sick. These are things that, coming back to, we're all of the human race. We have to make allocation for consciously on a daily basis, because it just makes sense to me. I don't genuinely have a problem with trying to be more proactive about promoting women. I have no issue whatsoever with that. And I'm pretty sure I've benefited myself because I am a woman. But I guess for me, fundamentally, I'm such a big believer in the equality of expectation and opportunity. And that to me is that's the fundamental paradigm shift that, I want us to go through.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, my name is June Sun. I'm a telecoms analyst at Global Data. Thanks for the panel. My question is, so you're all obviously leaders in your industries at senior positions who are very much, you understand these kinds of issues. There are lots of leaders out there who don't yet. So for people who maybe have less influence than you, for younger women starting out in the industry, what is a way to start the dialogue with people against whom you have very little power? How do you start to discuss these things with them when they're not as open in attitude as you?
We don't have to stand for it anymore. It's what you said with a lot of people 30 and younger, just won't tolerate it anymore. And if you look at, that is definitely an improvement to even 10, 15 years ago. We as women do not have to take it anymore. And I think, unfortunately, when you have things coming out like what happened at Uber and certainly within Hollywood and Harvey Weinstein, women don't have to sit back and be quiet about it, and we don't have to tiptoe around the issue, and we don't have to be war heroes, and we don't, we don't have to pick a fight, but, if there is genuinely an issue where we're being put at a disadvantage because of our gender, we just have to speak up about it. And whilst, you may not always have 100% positive reaction from the person who's doing it, you will find people around you now, that, whether inside the company or just outside, where you can talk to people and start to get support. I think generationally, it's very, very different. Even, and that's why I love me some millennials, because, that is a generation that just won't tolerate it. And I think that's fantastic, and we don't have to.